Well, welcome everybody to our July 16th Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board meeting. And our first order of business is a call to order and Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item on the agenda is public comment from anyone in the audience who wishes to address the Board of Manager on an item not on the agenda or the consent agenda. Come forward at this time. And not seeing anybody coming forward, we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. And I don't think there's any changes. I know we'll have to do one change in the consent agenda, but that's separate. Is there approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Manager Boyle, second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, so now we're going to move right on to programs and project update from staff.
All right, for the July programs update, we'll start with lake level graphing. Prior Lake is at 902.59. Spring Lake is at 910.97. So we've seemed to hit the summer heat where evaporation's becoming an impact on water levels. So, but overall, seems like residents are happy with where the lake's at, and that we have seem to get back to normal water level elevations in our watershed. District staff have been working to display our ferric chloride data through a telemetry onto our website. This is an internal only display, but staff can view water that is going through County Ditch 13, the level at the weir, the signals that our pump is receiving from our data logger, how much chemical is in our tank. We've created an alarm for potential leaks, and we're working to better display some of this, internally for additional uses. But it's kind of been a journey to get this set up, and this is a useful tool for us with the new system. Our increased dosing rate, it'll allow us to be more efficient and make sure that we're completing the work on a timely manner and not have any gaps in dosing. President Loney?
Yeah, Jeff, that was exactly what's going to be my question. It seemed like because we've got better components now, more accurate components, and you did say the efficiency. You were able to determine there's better efficiency on applying the chemical and getting better efficiency out of what we're doing?
That's what we're hoping for. And one of the, so since the dosing curve has been changed for June through September, we've increased the dosing rate to try and achieve better removal rates. We're going through chemical at faster rates than we used to. So our storage is now limited. So we're increasing our deliveries, and with lag time between when we order it and when it arrives, and we've decreased the tank size, so it's just a little bit more to manage. But with this, it's really nice. We don't have to be out there every single day wondering what the chemical capacity is.
So you can determine, you'll be able to better determine the efficiency.
Yep, right online. Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, what is the difference between iron chloride tank volume and if iron chloride level as CD2? I'm not sure I understand those two, because it seems like one is flat and then it jumps up, and one is just gradually decreasing down towards zero.
Yeah, the tank level is, this just got fixed this afternoon. So we're looking at maybe 2 hours of
Oh,
quality
so it
display.
just started working, that monitor.
Yeah, we've been trying to get the information. We've had troubles sending the information. So we got it running today. And then, so CD2 is the actual level of water going over the weir that we have a rating curve for that tells us how much flow goes through the system. And then that associates with the pump, which is the signal here. So the signal runs on a 4 to 20 milliamp.
So is the one that says iron chloride level at CD2, is that the flow over at CD2 area? Is that what that is?
There are two data sets being displayed on this graph. And because those spikes over on the right, those shouldn't be there. So it's the scaling's off. But what you're seeing is in green, there's a signal. That's how much it's associated with the pumping rate. The red, because the scaling's off, it should show water level also declining. So we're making sure that the pumping rate is what it should be when the water level's going down. Right now, the display needs to be fixed.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep, happy to be able to share this information, even though there's some bugs that we got to work out.
Yep. Thank you.
I'll jump right into, this is my sort of, call it talk two of three in the lake management highlight. So today I'll go in. Last week we talked about lake monitoring, assessments and surveys. This month we'll talk about how we interpret that data and how that gets used, how we check changes over time and ask ourselves, are our goals being met? First, that starts with data cleaning and validation. We want to use the best quality data to inform our decision making, and in order to do that, we set up data quality steps. This is done by screening errors, gaps, and anomalies in our data sets. We receive data from, a multitude of operations, from collecting data in the field, to loggers, to fisheries data, all sorts of data. And we need to correct and sometimes remove some poor quality data or inconsistent data. We use metadata and documentation, such as observations in the field when we're collecting it. Was it windy? Was there, stuff on the water that was influencing what we were seeing? So our database is an important tool that we use to provide consistency in our data validation and quality control processes. Next, we use statistical and trend analysis to identify patterns. Those patterns can be spatial, so across different locations. They can be over time, so temporal. And then trends can be long-term patterns useful for predictions. So for example, here we have the long-term annual average level of Prior Lake. And then in red, we have when the weir was installed. So, could you say that weir has stabilized flooding in Prior Lake? You could maybe make that assumption. And then for trends, we create lake report cards. These trends can tell us if the lake water quality is improving. And for example, on Upper Prior Lake, We can create grades, and those patterns can help us choose when to move forward with actions on lake management. We visualize and map. So we create maps and charts and graphs to show relationships. And in these two photos, we have carp locations over several years. And the difference here is carp in Spring Lake in July, August, September versus carp locations in the winter. So these are aggregations, and we use these we go out there and use telemetry data, but when we're collecting that information, it's just GPS points and triangulations. But then as soon as we put them on a map and display this, we can use that information to help direct where we should target removals. We use data for modeling and forecasting. This is, mostly done through EOR. For example, we have elevations on Prior Lake when predicted rainfall happens. So these can guide and allow us to better manage water level and reduce flood risk. We take data and we interpret that through those graphs and charts and data sets, and that allows us to make decisions. So we translate data into insights. We identify and compare thresholds, so like where should the data be? And then we organize it and we try and format that information for stakeholders to understand. So if the stakeholders are, our partners or the public, we might change how we display that information. One that is relevant recently here is that on the right we have total phosphorus loading in the district. The Spring Lake West is a site that shows high loading from a small watershed. The data is consistent year to year. Reducing loading here can make a big impact on Spring Lake's external loading. And land use is unlikely to change or, have be a driver why the data. So the data should stay consistent with the land use. So, those are ways that we can interpret that data. So next month, we'll talk about problem and solution identification. And we'll talk about how that can help, lead to bigger steps in lake management change. And as a reminder, this is all an adaptive management strategy. These go into almost all of our projects and implementations. Any questions on the programs?
I don't see any questions, no?
I have one more program update coming from Danielle. Just a reminder that Danielle is organizing a carp carnival. We'll be celebrating meeting our population goals on Upper Prior Lake. She's organized a ton of really awesome family-friendly activities, games. You'll get to see a trap net deployed and help with that. It'll be a really good chance to introduce people to our work and just engage people. You may notice that we are not pumping out a ton of notices about this event yet, and that's because it is at a beach on a Saturday, And we anticipate that if it's a nice weather, we'll be at capacity already with just passive attendees and people who know it through hearing our updates as partners. So we'll be kind of playing it by ear on weather, and if it's looking like that beach might be less crowded and we can accommodate boosting it up, we will do that the week of. But in case you're wondering why you're not seeing it everywhere, that is why. And I'll move right into projects. A few that I'm going to touch on today. We'll talk about Spring West area, which Jeff mentioned is an area of focus for us. Talk a little bit about what's to come in Upper Prior Lake alum treatment, an update on Swamp Lake iron enhanced sand filter, and then some updates on Fish Lake external loading projects. So first is the Spring West. We did a feasibility study which identified an iron enhanced sand filter in this area in 2022. And this is largely to reduce nutrients running into Spring Lake, which then impacts Upper Prior Lake. It's a priority project, would reduce quite a bit of phosphorus. We are working on acquiring an easement currently, and then if that is successful, we would seek grant funding to do proceedings with final design and construction. But this priority project seems to be moving forward well. Next, I guess I put a slide between the two Spring Wests, but next I'll touch a little bit about the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment. So the goal with an alum treatment on any lake, but especially for Upper Prior Lake, is to reduce Upper Prior Lake's nutrients inside of it. So there was a phase 1 treatment done in 2022. The way treatments are done is sometimes that dosing is split up into multiple treatments so that you can tweak and make it effective for that specific lake and kind of cater to what you're seeing. So we did dose 1 in 2020. The grant we received to do that did require that we would go through and do phase 2, which would be a 100% treatment of what we saw in the lake at that time. And so we have been monitoring and looking at our lake bottoms, soils, and phosphorus release, and it indicates that phase 2 we're ready for that. It's currently included in the draft budget for 2026. The district has been building a reserve for these treatments because they're expensive. And so I just wanted to prepare you today for the timeline and how that's going to work backwards for us. So you'll see on the middle of the screen that I've put treatment in April of next year. And we're targeting that because we have limited opportunities to get on the lake, and so it's best to do it early spring where there's not a lot of docks and boats going in. So to get on the contractors list to be done in early spring, we got to get on their radar early. There's really only one contractor that does this type of treatment. So if we want treatment in April 26, that contractor has told us they can only provide us a quote 6 months before. And so that would be meaning that we're contracting with them in October of this year, which means you'll see that at next month's meeting, there will be several things on the board agenda for approval, and they'll be sequenced in the order that we'll need to approve. So first, like any capital project, we'll need to have a public hearing. That's been noticed for in the Star Tribune. Those are going out. Then we'll, assuming the public hearing goes forward, we'll put forward a scope for the engineering firm to progress the project. And then finally, we'll seek your authorization for have that engineering firm go out to bid. And the reason that's happening in August is so that we can have a bid period in September and get the final approval in October. So that's kind of how we work backwards. And I see Manager Loney, you have a question here.
Yeah, did you say there's only one bidder?
Yep, that we're aware of, yep.
I mean,
The price point is we'll have to go out to competitive bids, but I'm only aware of one contractor that does it locally.
only one?
Locally.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we'll be waiting to see what that one bid comes in at then.
Manager Toffenelli.
They won't give us a bid beyond 6 months. Not even if they were to establish a cost of the materials and work on a percentage change. I understand 6 months, but that seemed to me to be material costs. And it's quite common to send quotes out based on a specific number and say it could go up and it'll go up X% based on cost of the material.
Yeah, I could dig into that further, what the flexibility is, but really, this timeline is crunched on us, our end anyways, so
Okay.
it works for us, but
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good point, though, in the future.
Any other questions for Emily on this item right now? Otherwise, we'll have her keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to prepare you all that you're going to see a lot of alum on the next agenda. So here's my other Spring West update. And you may recall on this left side of the screen, there's a pipe that was crushed. And actually in 2024, early 2024, we looked at replacing that. And the reason we wanted to replace that was because this area has a lot of potential sources of pollutants, excess nutrients, and it was hard to pinpoint where exactly it was coming from because all of the water was coming together and it was mixed right from the first point that it daylighted. So we did some cost share with the landowner to replace that pipe, and the goal was to have it perched. So you can see my little water droplet icon there with the bottle. That was our goal, is to be able to collect a sample underneath it and say, okay, well, be able to compare. This water that's coming out of this pipe is about this level, and so upstream it's here, and we can really kind of triangulate where the issue is coming from and how much. Because this area has row crops, an active dairy, and there was a failed septic system, which has been since deemed repaired by the county, but there's been issues, so we just want to be able to really understand where things are coming from. However, we went to monitor this. We replaced the pipe last winter, 2024, early winter, and we're hoping to monitor in 2024 summer. We waited and waited. It was a wet year, and the outlet pipe was full of water, just like this picture you're seeing here. So basically what's happening is now we can't get two distinct samples anymore. We thought in 2024 it was due to high water levels, and this year we're still seeing that even when we're not having those conditions. So we looked further into it, and it appears that there's some erosion problems in the ditch downstream that are essentially causing that water to back up in the ditch. It's really low grade here, so it can happen really easily. So I just wanted to give you the update that's why we don't have monitoring results yet. That's the bad news. The good news is the landowners have been great to work with. They're interested in understanding where the problem is coming from. And so it might take longer, but we'll likely solve two problems, this erosion problem and then figuring out where it's coming from. So it's still moving forward. It's taking a simple thing became complex. So it may take even a year or two to get those other erosion projects implemented. So in the meantime, we're just doing our best to reduce and continue monitoring. Moving on to swamp iron enhanced sand filter. This project is in the upper reaches of our watershed. Its primary goal is to reduce nutrients to Spring Lake. We awarded a bidder earlier this year. We're almost complete on contracting and hadn't expected to construct until later fall, but the contractor has expressed that they're ready to launch. So we'll likely break soil as soon as we can complete that contract. And then I also just wanted to let you know that we received a grant through Bowser, the Projects and Practices grant, that requires outreach elements, and we included some really interesting time-lapse video and some other videos we can use for our outreach it'll also include it as a public tour in 2026. So you'll see some new things with that project. And a quick shout out to Spring Lake Township for contributing to that project as well. And then lastly, I wanted to give you an update on the 200th Street Pond Improvement Project. This project looks at excavating some soils that were deposited in, were basically cattle watering ponds that were dug by a past landowner and reducing nutrient runoff to Fish Lake. So we have some WBIF funds for this project. Since proposing and advancing design, we wanted to check what the soil and water samples were coming back as, because we had used the land use assumptions, but we wanted to kind of get a better sense of what the benefit would be. And so far, the soil and water samples have confirmed that there's high phosphorus in here, and we're still cranking the numbers to get the exact estimate on benefit, but in my estimate from just looking at the numbers is that it will be more beneficial than the Fish Lake Management Plan guessed, which is really good to see that we'll get more for that project. I anticipate that we'll have a contract to approve for you at the August meeting, and then the goal would be to construct this winter. And that's all for me.
Any questions for Emily? I just have one. I know you know the answer too, but Project 10 is potential flood storage. And just want to remind everybody where Project 10 is. I think that is by
That's the Buck Lake.
Buck Lake?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep. You're referencing in the packet,
yeah.
the
That's
update
fine.
there. Yep.
Just got to be reminded of that. Okay.
Yep. Thank you for that
That's my only
clarification.
question. Okay, no more questions from the managers? Did a good job. So now we're going to go to other old business. We're going to first start out with item 4.2, which is a Kate's Lake Goldfish Management Decision. And let's see, who's going to take this?
Manager Loney, I can
Jeff,
introduce
are you
this.
taking this one?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
So based off of previous conversations and public comment, we did some talking with the DNR, who informed us that goldfish management is a really difficult task. As we recall, we had residents speak about using predatory fish to help manage goldfish in Kate's Lake. After discussing with the DNR, they shared with us that predation is an option for non-public water basins, so that excludes Kate's Lake. They said that Kate's Lake is not a good candidate for predatory stocking of northern pike due to the non-public status, and then that Kate's Lake has shallow characteristics, and those stocked fish can be susceptible to winter kill. The DNR also mentioned that removing fish is not known to be effective, or removing goldfish is not known to be completely effective for managing goldfish. That lowering water levels to facilitate winter kill would require DNR approval, and that they would be unlikely to approve of that method. And that if a pesticide would be used, that they would also require approval, and that would be unlikely to be approved. So going through the DNR route for goldfish management seems very unlikely, and so it just shows that goldfish management within Kate's Lake is very challenging task. So, looking more into Kate's Lake, the district considers Kate's Lake a Tier 3 lake, and that our goal on Tier 3 lakes is to investigate and build data sets to help identify a management strategy of those lakes. So we're continuously building those data sets through camp volunteers, collecting water quality monitoring data, which, you know, at this point shows that Kate's Lake still has excellent water quality. It has 3 A's, so all in total phosphorus, water clarity, and chlorophyll A. So at this point, staff are proposing that the motion to hold on management of goldfish in Kate's Lake and to continue to monitor water quality.
Okay, good report. Manager Boyles.
Is that great?
Yeah, you're on.
Would it be accurate to say that there's really not much opportunity for the district to do anything effective because the DNR's basically said, right?
That's one way to look at it.
And if I wanted to make a motion to that effect, it would be accurate. I'm putting staff in a bad position.
I would say that management is a possibility. It's difficult. There's other organizations in the metro that do conduct goldfish management. Some of them have been successful, others have not. But it is, if you were to ask them, they've all mentioned that it's very difficult given the quantity of goldfish. You know, the total quantity of individual fish is just, it's really high compared to, you know, where we help manage common
Thank you.
carp.
I apologize for putting you in a difficult situation.
A better question would have been, what does the DNR approve?
That's precisely what.
I mean, I think what Frank was trying to get at is, do they approve of anything on this issue? And it appears not. Just let it ride, which is what your motion, you're basically saying. We're just going to hold and continue to monitor.
Correct. Goldfish are still an emerging invasive topic, especially with the DNR, and there isn't
Okay.
really a proven strategy here.
And I assume you have reached out to the lady that was here, Pam Dorr, and gave her the good news or bad news or whatever you want to say, gave her the news?
President Loney, we did share the staff report with Ms. Dorr and made her aware that we would have this as a discussion item. And she acknowledged receipt of it and appreciated us reaching out and contacting her.
Okay. All right. So there is a motion here to, and I'll read it, to hold on management of goldfish on Kate's Lake and to continue to monitor lake water quality. Anyone want to make that motion? Nobody? Okay. If nobody wants to make that motion. Did you make it? Motion made, Manager Tofinelli, second by Manager Burnett. Now we can have discussion. Any more discussion on the motion? Anybody want to give your 2 cents, 25 cents? Anything? Matt?
Do we do anything different on Kate's Lake as a third-tier lake in the monitoring that we don't do for any other Tier 3 lakes?
Off the top of my, Manager Tofinelli, off the top of my head, I don't believe we,
Are we treating it special?
no.
Okay, thank you.
I just want, we described this lake as a non-public lake. Can you,
I don't get that.
huh?
I don't get that.
I don't get it either. Why is that a non-public lake versus a public lake?
Let me make a correction here. The DNR does not, will not stock, let me see how I can,
Your memo here talks about predatory fish stocking for non-public water basins is not a DNR approved.
correct. So if there is a private pond on a residential property, the DNR will allow you to stock predatory fish. The DNR does not approve permits for other organizations or individuals to stock predatory fish in public waters.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to know what the non-public or public was. Okay, anybody else got a question? Managers, you're looking like you're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, 5-0. Okay, then we're going to go to item 4.3, Minnesota Watershed 2025 Annual Meeting Delegate Appointment. And Manager Geesey is going to present.
President Loney and managers. The purpose of this agenda item is to vote on the appointment of 2 delegates and 1 alternate to attend the 2025 annual meeting on resolutions and petitions for Minnesota watersheds, and to vote on behalf of the district on proposed resolutions and revisions to the legislative platform for Minnesota watersheds. At our workshop, we had 2 managers come forward to volunteer to serve as delegates and 1 to serve as the alternate. So the motion is to appoint managers Burnett and Loney as delegates and Manager Boyles as an alternate to vote on behalf of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District at the Minnesota Watersheds 2025 annual meeting on resolutions and petitions.
Okay, I think that,
I make the motion to, yeah. So moved, sorry.
okay. Motion made by Manager Burnett, as whatever Administrator Geesey said.
Yes.
Second by Manager Topanelli. Okay, any discussion on this motion? I think we had enough discussion at the workshop.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Now we're going to go to one of the main items tonight, County Ditch 13 Drainage Authority. And I see we have a memo on our table here too, Administrator Geesey, and so.
Yes, President Loney, there is a memo in front of you. It is identical in wording to the memo that is included in the packet. It's just reformatted slightly different to enhance the understanding and the intent of the recommended action. So, let's see here. So, once again, there are kind of 4 major subwatersheds that feed into Spring Lake, with the subwatershed containing County Ditch 13 being one of the primary watersheds feeding the lake and a source of, one of the larger sources of pollutants to Spring Lake. County Ditch 13 is comprised of 4 branches. A main branch that is depicted in kind of red and pink in this graphic. Branch 1 is depicted in blue, branch 2 is in green, and 2A in kind of the gold color. The county ditch actually terminates on the north end, just off of this graphic. This is a bad graphic. So it actually ends on the north side of Highway 13. So where the culvert, at the north end of the culvert that passes underneath Highway 13, is the northern terminus of County Ditch 13. A diversion authority is responsible to inspect the system on an established periodic basis and to perform maintenance to avoid obstructions and flooding of the drainage system. The authority would receive and process petitions for repairs for the property owners along the drainage ditch, and to receive and process petitions for partial abandonment, diversion, and improvements. So we just went forward in front of the diversion authority to receive a authority or approval for diversion as part of our Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter project. So under statute 103D 621 subdivision 4, well, let me back up. So most diversion authorities are operated under state statute 103E, which covers drainage ditches. With us, with the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District being located within the metropolitan area, 7-county metropolitan area, we have the ability to operate as the diversion authority under statute 103D 621 subdivision 4. In order for us to use that statute to be operate as the diversion authority would require the concurrence of the governing bodies of basically Sand Creek Township, Spring Lake Township, and the city of Prior Lake. They all have to concur that we would be able to operate under 103D instead of 103E. And that also gives us, but with us operating it under 103D, that does not prohibit us from also doing maintenance operations that are consistent with 103E as well. Another thing that 103D provides the watershed district, once again, let me back up, under 103E, the way that costs are allocated to the benefiting property owners is through what's called a determination of benefits. With using 103D, what we can do instead is to set up a watershed management district, which is essentially kind of like a utility fee to help us cover the costs of managing the drainage ditch. And we would need to then, through setting up a watershed management district, we would then need to determine a methodology for cost allocation for those costs. It could be based on the benefits received, it could be based on the burdens imposed, or some sort of percentage between those two different approaches. We also have the ability to, depending on what the project type is, to determine what sources of funding would be used to pay for that project. So maybe if the project is clearly just cleaning out the drainage ditch to improve flow, we would probably then assess that out using our watershed management district charge system. But let's say we come up with a project that has both drainage benefits, but also water quality benefits or flood control benefits, then we would maybe on a case-by-case basis decide maybe a certain portion of this cost should be allocated through the watershed management district, and then maybe we should pay for the rest of the project using our ad valorem taxes or grants. So on a case-by-case basis, we could determine what the sources of funding would be to pay for that project by using this under 103D. So a previous question came up, once again, could the watershed district take over the operations, kind of as is, without creating a watershed management district? So basically operating it under 103E. And we could continue to do that if we were just going to do minor maintenance for a year or two. But if we intend to implement any sort of major projects, then we really need to, once again, set up a watershed management district and figure out what that charge system is going to be. So are there any benefits for the watershed district to take on the role of being the drainage authority? It would help us streamline the implementation of projects adjacent to County Ditch 13, such as, once again, with where we just had to go forward in front of the Drainage Authority to receive approval for the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. If we are the Drainage Authority, I think we can approve ourselves. If there is a petition by property owners for abandonment, and the current Drainage Authority goes forward with that, if we take that on, there is no risk that the ditch would be abandoned. We would be able to make that call. And it would also it would make it easier to identify and implement what we call multi-purpose drainage projects. Once again, those projects that are not only just serving agricultural drainage, but could possibly also provide added additional benefits, either in the form of flood mitigation or water quality improvements. And actually, the Board of Water and Soil Resources offers Clean Water Fund grants targeted specifically for multi-purpose drainage projects. As an example, in fiscal year 24-25, they had allocated $1.9 million towards multi-purpose drainage projects. Examples of these sort of projects are side inlet ditches, wetland restorations, and I've highlighted two-stage ditches because here is where I think there is some potential opportunity. The image to the right is an example of a two-stage ditch. Once again, where you have the low flows through the ditch, kind of very secluded to the center of the ditch, meandering, but then on either side you have some benches that once again can help mitigate larger storm events and flood events. The vegetation on those benches also filter out sediment and potential pollutants. So once again, these two-stage ditches really have the opportunity to provide both flood mitigation opportunities as well as water quality benefits. I will say, though, that this is a long-term vision to install a two-stage ditches, and they would also, we'd want to be doing an assessment to make sure that that these would be installed in places where it would be cost-effective. So there's a lot of opportunity, but definitely due diligence, and basically this has to be a very long-term vision to install these, because there'd be a lot of discussions and negotiations and conversations with property owners and trying to find the funding. So some of the constraints, we probably will, it'd probably be somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 of consulting fees plus staff time to initially set up the systems needed to set up the watershed management district. Our staff has not managed a drainage ditch, so we would definitely need some additional training on what you do and don't do for 103E. Taking on this role would require that we have to update our water resources management plan and get approval by Bowser for that. We may potentially have to update our Rule I on drainage alterations. Also, some of the landowners may not like being brought into a watershed management district charge system. Also, we're going to need to have some staff take on ongoing administration of the drainage system, and whether that is staff maybe not putting as much effort into current operations, so reallocating where staff are spending their time, or potentially having to bring on additional staff to take on this role. Just as for a point of comparison, Scott County provided cost with us in terms of just amount of just cost expenditures that they've had with this ditch for the last couple of years. So most recently, they have been doing repairs in the vicinity of about, $18,000 to $20,000 on the ditch annually. Things we don't know. Will taking on the Drainage Authority strengthen or weaken the district's relationship with the farming community? And I think a lot of this may depend on the approach that we take in terms of the timing of, of projects, what our charge system methodology will be. But it may be likely that we may now be more perceived as a regulatory entity to some of the property owners along the ditch. But certainly our goal would be to be seen more as partners than the regulatory authority. Also, what we don't know yet is that it appears that there are 2 parcels that are right now considered a benefiting parcel and who are part of paying into County Ditch 13 that actually lie outside of the boundaries of the watershed district. So what we would need to do is reassess if these parcels are truly benefiting from the County Ditch 13, and either we would need to establish a joint powers agreement with Scott County to bring in those 2 parcels, or another option would be to modify our watershed boundary to encapsulate those parcels. So additional assessment would be, more assessment would be needed specifically to those parcels. So the next steps would be a board motion that I will read here in a minute. And if the board votes yes on this, then staff would need to revise our 2026 draft budget to incorporate costs for setting up a watershed management district. So the proposed motion is to move that the Board of Managers favors the district assuming from Scott County pursuant to Minnesota Statute 103D 625 Subdivision 1 the role of Drainage Authority for County Ditch 13 with the intent to fund County Ditch 13 management by means of a water management district under Minnesota Statute 103D 729 on the following conditions. A, that Sand Creek and Spring Lake Townships and the City of Prior Lake concur in district management of County Ditch 13 under authority of Minnesota Statute 103D 621 Subdivision 4. B, that Scott County enters into a joint agreement with the district as needed to bring a parcel benefited by County Ditch 13 outside of the district's legal boundary within the district's drainage authority jurisdiction. C, the existing County Ditch 13 fund balance is preserved for the district's use. And D, the county agrees to administer the annual watershed management district charge without additional fees. And that the district administrator is directed to engage county staff regarding the transfer of authority pursuant to these terms and report to the board.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a very detailed report. You've been doing a lot of investigation on this over the last few months, and I think you did a very good job of laying out the issue and all the things involved in it. So the recommended action that Joni just mentioned was a motion. So does someone want to make that motion so we can get it on the table to discuss?
So moved?
Motion by Manager Burnett.
Second.
Second by Manager Tofinelli. Okay, so we have a motion on the table as discussed, and any discussion, any thoughts on the motion? Manager Boyles.
Just a question. So we've got a draft 2026 budget in front of us. Do you expect that adoption of this motion would impact our ability to get any of the contemplated projects done? In other words, we have to pare back or delay one or more projects because of these new responsibilities.
Manager Boyles, I believe that the 2026 budget can accommodate the additional costs of approximately $35,000 to $50,000 to set up a watershed management district, either through additional levy funds or through out of our budget reserves, and that we have most of the timing will be staff would be with my effort, along with assistance with, I would believe, Scott Soil and Water.
Okay. Manager Tofinelli.
On the list of recommended actions, was that reviewed by legal counsel?
Manager Tofinelli, that was provided by legal counsel.
Thank you.
I have just one quick question. So if Sand Creek, Spring Lake Township, or the city of Prior Lake doesn't concur, which I don't know, I mean, I think it's a high likelihood they would, but if they didn't, then the issue's done. I mean, we can't take over that authority.
Well, we could take it over as 103E, but our desire is to
Okay.
take it over using 103D.
Okay. So follow-up question then, will you have to go to each jurisdiction and ask for their concurrence then?
Manager, yes, I believe that we would have to come and approach each.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from anybody? I know this is kind of, it seems like this came upon us kind of sudden, but, oh, it's been 3 months. But I mean, all of a sudden, it wasn't anticipated in last year's budget, okay? That's what I'm saying. It kind of was thrown into our lap, so to speak. And I think it is best that we do take over this if the county's not going to want to take it over or not continue with it. So my only disappointment would be that if the county, there's some, I think you mentioned at their workshop, Joni, that there's like $25,000 in this fund already that would come our way, which we could use to administer in 2026. Would that be a correct statement?
That would be a correct statement.
Okay. All right. No more questions from the managers? I'm assuming you're ready to vote? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, 5-0. And thank you for your very good work on this, Joni. Very good, very detailed work. Okay, so now we're going to go to the treasurer's report. And Manager Morkenberg is going to update us.
Thank you, Manager Loney. So our financial report for, here in July, basically in June, we received our tax settlement statement for the first half of the year, which helped us financially. The district also received an $11,000 payment from an insurance company to reimburse for costs incurred during the City Hall basement flooding last year, and that was received after a required $5,000 deductible. The expenditures for the year are where we expect them to be, and the monthly expenses reflect increased monitoring, as we have been hearing from our staff, the iron chloride dosing, which is going up, and the AIS management activities associated with the summer months. The cash flow chart here, when you look at that, you can see that last month the district paid the pipelining contractor approximately 5% of the construction cost. And as shown in the cash flow statement, the district is loaning money to the PLOC fund to cover for the construction costs until the PLOC fund receives a grant from the MPCA. The staff is preparing grant reimbursement requests and hope to have the funds in the next month or two. And part of that also has to do with when we receive the billing from the contractor. Obviously, it's a big project, and it's a big deal that we got it done. Very important for Prior Lake. and great job by the staff to get the grant money. So good luck getting the final money. The cash flow statement indicates that we have adequate funds to cover the district's operations for the remainder of the year, even with this event. The cost analysis, the last document, summarizes our expenditures in a manner that highlights the year-to-date payments to consultants, to vendors and contractors for district activities. The expenditures for the PLOP pipelining do not show up on these financial statements, and these costs are reflected in a separate financial statements for the PLOP fund. And I believe that's the end of my report. Any questions?
Any questions on financial report? I don't think so.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to go to the consent agenda next then. And item 6.3 has to be removed for a change on the claims list, which is on our on the table here. And other than that, I'll read the consent agenda items. Meeting minutes of June 17th, 2025 board workshop, and also the meeting minutes, June 17th, 2025 board meeting. Claims list was removed. The quarterly investment summary, 6.4, and resolution 25-398, amending the 2025 budget to reallocate funds in the 509 implementation fund from 550 Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter to 550 Spring Lake West Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. So moved. Motion by Manager Tofinelli.
Second.
Second by Manager Morkenberg. No discussion on the consent agenda, so all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And then on 6.3, I think there is just one change, and it's listed in red there, that the tribal chaining has to go to Manager Burnett. Do you want to make a comment on
Yeah,
that, Joni?
President Loney, the dollar value did not change from what was in the packet, but what staff realized is with that in the original claims list, we had put the payment to the tribal relations vendor, where in fact Manager Burnett had already paid it, and this is really just a reimbursement of Manager Burnett for that training.
Okay. So with that, I just need a motion to approve the claims list.
So moved.
Motion by Manager Morkenberg. Second. Second by Manager Tofinelli. All in favor of the claims list as presented on the table, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, upcoming maintenance or upcoming meeting and event schedule. Manager Boyles.
We have 4 of them to go over with you. The first is, as mentioned earlier, the Carnival, which is a celebration of meeting Upper Prior Lake Carp Goal. That is Saturday, July 26, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Sandpoint Beach Park. Citizens Advisory Committee then meets on Thursday, July 31st, 6 p.m. here at City Hall in the Wagon Bridge Conference Room downstairs. The Board of Managers for August meet Tuesday, August 19 at 4 p.m. in their workshop in the Parkview Conference Room. And finally, the actual formal monthly meeting, same date, Tuesday, August 19, 6 p.m. here in the City Council chambers.
Thank you, Manager Boyle. And with that, I hear the rain is coming down pretty good. So maybe we should.
Timing was perfect.
Well, it's time to adjourn. I don't know if I want to run to my car right now. Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Manager Morkenberg. Second by Manager Tofinelli. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. And we're out of here at 7:05. Thank you, everybody. Wow.
Look at that rain.
Boy, it sounded like